Hey Pinal County, welcome to another edition of Pinal's People. Coming onto the show today is someone who has been a staple in the Casa Grande community for several years, Casa Grande Union alum, now current athletic director at Union, Mr. Randy Robbins. Randy, thank you so much for joining the show today.
Thank you, David. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
appreciate
awesome.
being here.
Awesome. So let's just start with your background. You know, you're Casa Grande through and through. You grew up here. You were born here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
correct.
What was it like just growing up here and being living in Casa Grande as a kid?
Well, I mean, it's back when I was going to high school here at Casa Grande, about 15,000 people, between 1977 and 1980 when I graduated from high school. It's always been a close-knit community. Mm-hmm. I've loved it. And, then I went away to college to U of A, for 4 years, and then went on from there to college and to Denver for a few years. Mm-hmm. And then when I came back in 2003, town was growing. Yeah. What I loved about it still had that small town feel. And even to the day, we're probably, 60, 70,000 people living here in this community. It still has that small town feel to it. Mm-hmm. And that's why I love being here.
Yeah, for sure. And growing up, I'm sure like everything, sports was a big thing in your life, right? So give me your first kind of memories of like learning sports, whether it be football, basketball. You were, like you said earlier before the interview started, you were a 4-sport athlete, right? So what was your first memories of sports as a kid?
Well, my first memories as a kid was probably when I was 10 years old. I was watching TV. And I was watching, football, college football on Saturday morning, and I saw this running back, number 33 from the University of Pittsburgh. His name was Tony Dorsett. I saw him. I said, "Wow!" I said, "I want to do that when I grow up." Yeah. And it was just, I just saw him. I wore the number 33 in high school because I emulated this guy. I just liked him. He wasn't a big guy. He was small, just like me. And so that's what I decided. I said I wanted to do that, and I wanted to work hard. But also my brothers, being the youngest of 7 in my family, my brother were athletes. They did track, football, and other sports too. So I was just surrounded by athletes, and so I was motivated by that. And my oldest brother did track at the University of Arizona. He was a high jumper, triple jumper in college. So that was always kind of instilled in me. Mm-hmm. So I've always had that, sports as a background.
Yeah, for sure. And as you just said, the youngest of 7. That's a big group right there. Was there any kind of like when you got older and you guys were into sports? So there's got to be. Was there any sibling rivalries as you guys were growing up, or what was that like? I
was the baby. So. It's a big difference. The oldest one was 81 and I'm 63. Mm-hmm. So that's a big difference. So, and the next one to me was my sister Tammy. Mm-hmm. She was 4 years older than me. So I was kind of the baby. I was kind of the, spoiled little brat baby, but they took care of me. Yeah, they really did. They supported me. They came to support my sporting events that I participated in. Mm-hmm. So that was good. That was very good.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, you grew up, you lived here in Casa Grande, and you got the chance to put on a Casa Grande Union uniform in multiple sports, in football, basketball, baseball, track and field. Yes. So what was it like when you got the chance to represent the community? Because in this town, in this city community, the sports town, it's a sports town here. Yeah. And it's like it's a local sports town. Yeah. What was it like to get that chance?
Well, I know when I got my scholarship to the U of A, my goal was to, I wanted to do the best that I can. I wanted to play as hard as I can because I knew that there were kids looking up to me or wanting to see how it was going to turn out when I went to college. And I always wanted to try to do the best that I could do. Mm-hmm. And when I went to college, I worked hard. I worked as hard as I could work. And because I wanted kids to know that they could do it. They could do the same things. Mm-hmm. And then after college, I was blessed enough to go to play professional sports for 9 years. And the great thing about that, after me came Anthony Edwards. Mm-hmm. Then after Anthony Edwards came Stephen Trejo. So that, I believe that they looked at me a little bit and said, hey, I can do that. And that's all I wanted for kids. Is just, hey, you can do that if you put in effort, if you work hard for it.
And before we started recording here, you mentioned that baseball was actually your best sport, even though football is kind of what you made your career out of.
Yeah.
What was, during your process, was there any kind of conversations of what sport you were going to go with, or was it always going to be football for you?
I think football, it's the first sport of the season. The scholarship came, and I said, it's where my brothers and sisters went to college, University of Arizona. I got a, football scholarship there. I said, hey, I'll go with that. I'll do that. And like I said, when I was 10 years old, I saw Tony Dorsett, and I said I wanted to do that. So I played football.
Yeah, and you spent your time primarily as a defensive back, right?
Defensive back.
I'm assuming, did you play multiple positions in football?
I started in the pros. I started every position. I started right cornerback, left cornerback, strong safety, and free safety.
Yeah.
So I started, at all four positions. I've started games.
Yeah. So defensive back obviously has different variations to it, like you mentioned, the safety positions, the cornerbacks.
Yeah.
Can you just kind of give a rundown to people who may not know what a defensive back is responsible for?
Basically, in a nutshell, the defensive back, we keep the wide receiver from trying to catch the ball. That's our job. Whether it be on the cornerbacks, I'm guarding the wide receivers up front, or if I'm playing safety, I'm in the back trying to keep them from getting deep on our cornerbacks. So that's basically what I try to do. We try to keep the wide receivers from catching the football.
Yeah.
That's our job.
And with that, obviously, speed is a huge part of the game. What was it? What were your workouts? What were you doing to get yourself prepared for those situations, to be ready for those tasks and those roles that you had on the team?
You're putting in a lot of effort and work in the off season. You're working with your track coaches, you're working with your strength and conditioning coaches, and your speed coaches that they have on staff there. In college, we had speed coaches, we had strength and conditioning coaches. That's what you do. In the off season, the work is put in the off season. During the season, that's the fun part. The stuff that nobody sees is what you do in the off season.
Right.
And I was putting in 3 to 4 hours a day, 4 to 5 days a week, Then sometimes when I'm in the summertime, I'm at 6 days a week, especially getting ready for the upcoming season. Then I would, about 2 or 3 weeks off, I would back out a little bit just so I can get my rest in and ready for camp.
Yeah. And with your experience in all those other sports, was there anything that you took, I hear a lot that football players have to be in track, right? It kind of gets their body still moving and everything.
Yes.
Was there anything you took from those other sports that elevated your football game?
Baseball, hand-eye coordination. Baseball, hand-eye coordination. Basketball, lateral movement, up and back. As a defensive back, those skill sets between baseball and basketball fit with football, especially with the cornerback position and also the safety position. You understand leverage.
Yeah.
You understand leverage, so that was great.
For sure. And let's kind of move forward to your career as well. So, you mentioned you went to U of A, you were on scholarship there, you got that opportunity. What was that process like? Was there other schools that were looking at you? Were you looking at other schools, or was it always, like you mentioned with your siblings, that U of A was the goal for you?
I had other schools look at me. I strongly considered Arizona State, because Arizona State was good back in those days. Frank Cush was their head coach, and he was a great coach. And we also had, I looked up to, Art and Benny Malone, who's just from Santa Cruz. So they played at Eloy. So those guys were big role models in the community. So I looked up to them. And but then, the scholarship offer came from U of A. I accepted it. And then from there, I was able to have a good career there.
Yeah. Did you get any slack from your siblings for considering Arizona State with that rivalry at all?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. But it wasn't too bad. They knew I was going to probably go to U of A.
Yeah. And you mentioned before, like, you saw it on the TV, that's what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
So was after, you go to college, was the thought of going professional in your head still in that time?
My thought was just be the best football player I can be. That was my goal. was to be the best football player I could be at my position, at the U of A. And I was able to start there for 3 years. And, then my junior year, I led the Pac-12. Well, back then it was Pac-10. Lead the Pac-10 in interceptions. And then I had a, good senior year, and I was able to get drafted, So, and once you get drafted, then you just, hey, take your best shot, And that's kind of what I did. Just take my best shot and use my athletic skills. And one thing I learned in the pros is, speed is speed. Whether you're wide receiver, defensive back, running back, and speed is speed. The difference I learned from college to pro was the speed of the lineman. In college you only have 1 or 2 linemen. In pros, all those guys can run, and that's where I noticed the difference from the pros. When we got out and started running the 40-yard dash in 20 yards, that big 300-pound lineman sitting right there with me. That's frightening. Yeah. So that's what I learned. I said, whoa, this game is different. That's the difference between college and the pros is the speed of the linemen. Those guys can run.
Yeah. And how would you sum up your time at U of A? Like, I mean, you're playing the game you love, you're having a good time. Yeah. And what was your time, how would you sum up your time in Tucson? What was that experience like?
It was great. I had great teammates. A lot of my college roommates, Ricky Huntley, Lamont Huntley, the brothers, and then also one of my good friends, defensive lineman Julius Holt, who passed away about 4 or 5 years ago, had an illness, but we were all tight, so we were all close-knit family. That's one thing about playing at the University of Arizona. All the sports, all of us were pretty tight, pretty close together. Yeah. And that's what I enjoyed about there was the culture of that program.
Yeah, and to your credit, you were really successful as a Wildcat as well. And recently, I believe in the fall or last year, you were inducted into the Ring of Honor in the football stadium.
Yeah, I was inducted in the Ring of Honor. Yeah. That was wow, because I was inducted in the Hall of Fame in 1990. That's all the athletes of the school. But the Ring of Honor in football, that's like, okay, I'm in the boys club.
Yeah. So, and that's a very exclusive club. There's a lot, like some of the best players that have come out of this program are in the history of the
school. So that's that's humbling.
Yeah, and you're with them, right?
That's humbling, and I'm with them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Tell me more about that, and plus the experience of being on there and being celebrated that time, right? What was that like?
That was humbling. I was very honored to be in the Ring of Honor. My name submitted for it, and it's like I said, it was just humbling when I went up there and I'm standing out on the field and I'm seeing them pull back the shades for my name, and then I'm seeing them up there with all those athletes that some of them I grew up watching, so that was very, I'm honored to be there. Mm-hmm. Honored to be there.
And with that, that experience and that success at U of A led you to the NFL.
Yes.
Led you to be, I believe it was the fourth round pick. The 1984 NFL draft.
84, yeah.
And you see it today, the NFL draft is a huge spectacle, right? I got to know what it was like back in the 80s when you were getting drafted.
It wasn't like that.
Right?
I was in class.
You were in class when you found out you got drafted? Wow.
Yeah, I was in class.
So what was going through your head when you found out?
I know the professor, I had a marketing class or something, and then I'm in the class and the professor said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, you got class." So he said, "Go," and so he excused me from class, but back that time I was driving home. As soon as I got home, I got drafted by the Broncos, and so I got a phone call, and then, in about an hour and a half, 2 hours, I was getting on a plane, going to Denver. Yeah. To meet my new team. So.
And that's got to be a huge mental shift. What was that like? Kind of just immediately going like, hey, wow, I just got drafted to the NFL, and now I'm, this is my career. This is what I'm doing. Take me through that.
Well, you got to understand how I grew up. My parents, they taught us to be humble. And they taught us to, if good things happen, be grateful, thank God for it, which I do. But however, don't get big-headed. Stay humble. And so I was my parents taught me well.
Yeah.
They taught me, okay, this is great, but this isn't for your whole life. This is a short window. You go to school, get your degree, you play this game as long as you can, then after that, then you have to start life. They taught me that at a young age, and that's what I thought about. It was great. They told me that, hey, don't get too high or don't get too low with it. But I always just respect it and take it and take it for as long as it lasts. Take it in.
And we hear from people that are drafted from the NFL. There's always this welcome to the NFL moment. Do you have one of those when you first got on a field and on a professional field?
Yes.
What can you tell me about it?
My welcome to the NFL moment. I was a rookie, like I said, my rookie year coming into training camp, got in there. And back in those days, my coach was Dan Reeves, he played for the Cowboys, Tom Landry, so that was my coach. Great coach, tough coach, great coach, a lot of structure there. So a lot of times, you hear like teams practicing against each other. Like back then, the Houston Oilers were coming into training camp to practice against us. So they flew in from Houston to practice with us for a week. And I don't know if you know who their running back is. Well, okay, I'll Google him after our conversation. Well, anyway, their running back was Earl Campbell, who's probably about 5'11". He's about 235 pounds. He probably has a 50-inch chest, 34-inch waist, 28-inch thighs. I mean, it's like hitting a brick wall.
Yeah.
And he was fast. So that my coming to the NFL moment was we're practicing, we're having a little scrimmage, and I was on the second team defensive backs, because as a rookie, you're not gonna, so I'm just coming in. I'm second team defensive back. And the Houston Oilers first team offense was coming in, and I'm looking to see who the running back was. It wasn't Earl the first play. So I'm sitting here at safety. I said, okay, good. Run a play. Then the second play, Earl comes jogging off the sideline. I said, oh my God. I said, oh my God. I said, here we go. So they run the play. It's I formation. I know what I formation is. It's, the fullback's coming to take out the linebacker, and here he comes. And, a first team professional offensive line against a second team professional defensive line, it's not going to work. So Earl is going to have a hole to run through. So I'm at free safety, and here I'm coming up, and he's coming up. And he's not being I said, oh my God. I said, in my mind, this is what I'm thinking. This is no joke. I said, if I don't hit this guy, I might get cut because you can't show no fear up there. But I also said, if I hit him, I might be dead too. So I said, let me go with the latter. So at least if I hit it, it's over, it's done. So I went and hit this guy. All of a sudden, everything just turned black.
Oh,
boom. No. Just everything just turned black.
Yeah.
Because I saw it on film the next day or later on. And so I hit him, and I just felt everything just went dark up here. And then so I felt myself grabbing onto him, and I tackled him, And then after I tackled him, things were starting to lighten back up. The lights start coming back on. The stars start going away. And then things were clearing up. I was dizzy. Then he said, nice hit, rookie. Boom.
There you go.
Patted me on the shoulder. I said, wow.
Welcome to the NFL.
That was my welcome to the NFL moment.
Right. And that's funny because those moments ended up being a 9-year career in the NFL.
Yeah.
And, I don't know what the average, career length for an NFL player is, but I know it's not 9 years.
I think it's 3.5 to 4 years.
Right. So what does it take to get there, and what is it like to have that? And, from growing up here in Casa Grande, you're finding yourself in the NFL for 9 years. You're in Super Bowls as well. Tell me what that feels like.
David, I just had one goal. I wanted to stay as long as I can. So people in my town, in my community. And when I mean community, not just Casa Grande, I'm thinking Coolidge, Florence, this county. That to me, this is our community. This is my hometown, but my community is Pinal County.
Right.
You know, I represent this county. So, you know, I wanted to play as long as I could because I wanted kids to see that somebody from this county could do that. And then you got Anthony Edwards. He played longer than I did. Awesome. That's what it's about.
Mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah.
Then Stephen Trejo. You know, then we had other guys from the county, you know, playing professional sports. That's what it's about. You know. That's all I wanted to accomplish. That's it.
Right. And, you know, with all that success, I also got to talk about, you know, being in Super Bowls. It was 3, right? 3 Super Bowls with the Broncos.
3.
It's, again, you know, the difference between the NFL draft to now and then, and I'm assuming Super Bowls now and then, there's got to be a little bit of a difference there. But was the spectacle, was it still, did you feel that when you were in there?
Yeah, you feel it. You know, now it just, you know, with social media, in all these different platforms, it's elevated.
Right.
But it was elevated back in our day, but that was the technology of the day. But it was still special. It's a special event. You know, even though we lost those Super Bowls, you're still second best in the world. So you can't really complain. Now, I don't really complain about that at all. You know, the Broncos, we did win Super Bowls. So as an organization, we're a very successful organization. So that's kind of, you know, how I view those games. But it's a great game to play in.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's a great game to play in.
Yeah. And going back to a little bit about, you mentioned your coaches in the NFL. I'm curious to know what the coaching dynamic is at that level. Because, you know, when you think of high school, it's very, it seems more intimate. You know, it's on a ground level. Did you feel any difference in that way, or was it more kind of still having a good relationship in that way?
It's still relationship. Yeah. It's relationship based. You know, like example, my college coach, Larry Smith. It's relationship based, but also you have a job to do.
Right.
You know, they're going to coach you differently. You know, and Dan Reeves was relationship. You know, he wanted to build a relationship with players, but you have a job to do. You have to do your job. If you don't do your job, they're going to put somebody else in there, or they're going to bring somebody else in there to replace you. You have to do your job.
Right.
That you have to do. But they do establish relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, with this 9-year career, I got to ask, you know, when did you realize that, you know, maybe it's time to retire? And was that a hard decision for you?
Yeah. Well, actually, my last year I played with the Patriots.
Right.
8 years with the Broncos, last year with the Patriots. We were coming down, I forget who we were playing. It was my last game, Patriots. We were rebuilding and stuff like that. The reason why I went to go play because my cousin was playing for the Patriots and I wanted to play with him. So we did that. And we were coming to the last game of the year. We weren't going to go to any playoffs. We were struggling that year. And we were coming down the last quarter. I'm saying to myself, I just want to get through this game. You know. And then and when I said that in my head, I said, I'm done after this.
Yeah.
When you're saying that, usually you say, hey, we wanted this fourth quarter. It was a tie because it was tied in after the third quarter. It's, you know, stuff like that. So instead of hey, let's get this so we can win the game in the fourth quarter, I said, I just want to have no injuries at the end of this. So that's what I was thinking at the end of in that game at that point. Then lo and behold, we went in overtime. So I said, oh my God, here we go.
And if that's coming, that's when you know that it's
time to go.
Right.
And you know, so. Went in overtime. We lost the game on the field goal. I ran into the locker room, took my stuff off, said, that's it. I'm done. I was done.
Right. And how quickly after you were ready to call it a career, call it a successful career, when did the thought become, I want to come back to Casa Grande? Was that always a thought for you, or did you?
No.
What was it like?
It probably that, you know, because that was 93. Then I went into Park and Recreation. You know, because my dad worked in the Parks and Recreation Department. He was in the park maintenance side. And, you know, so I worked in Parks and Recreation for about 10 years, you know, developing athletic programs and stuff like that. So probably, you know, about 2013, 14, you know, there was an opportunity, you know, here to, be the AD, here, and I said, wow, okay, that's something that I'm interested in, because it's kind of, life kind of wanted to go full circle, and I wanted to come back, and if kids wanted to ever wanted help in going to college, or if they interested in pro sports, I can be of assistance. And that's kind of how it got me started on being in the AD route.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. It's a full circle moment, right?
Yeah.
You're able to come back where it all started almost,
yeah,
right?
Come back all started and let kids know that they can be successful. And also, sometimes, our town, our community has had a stigma, because the last time we had won a state championship in football in the sport that I played was 1958. So that was the last time that Casa Grande had won a state championship, and I wanted to be a part of that, or at least help be able to assist in that in some way.
Yeah. So fast forward to 2021, 2022, when this team is going undefeated, and you guys are on a ride here, and you have a great homegrown talent in the quarterback and Angel Flores all around him. And what was it like seeing? I'm sure you've had great moments in your high school career, in college, in the pros, but what was it like seeing your team win a championship?
That was the best feeling I've ever had.
Really?
College, pro, that was the best feeling I've ever had when we won that game, because if you look in the stands, it wasn't just Casa Grande Union, it was Casa Grande.
Yes.
It was Casa, the whole town, the whole city. There were people coming in from out of state to come watch that game. It brought the community together, for one event, and those kids, played their tails off, It
was a tight game, too.
It was a great game.
Yeah.
It was a great game. Won it on the last play.
Yeah.
So, won it on the last play. And for our community to experience that was the best feeling I ever had. Ever.
And I gotta think that is also another example of showing kids that it's possible.
Yes.
And that is a big thing for you, right?
Yes.
Can you tell me more about that thought process for you?
These kids they just need to let it go. They have it in them. They just got to let it go. Trust their instincts. If they do that, man, they can reach the stars. If you try to reach the stars, you'll end up being one.
Yeah.
But you gotta want to put in the time, put in the effort, put in the work. You can do it if you want to, if you really want to. And we have some kids in this community that are very talented, boys and girls. They're very talented, especially the girls' side.
Yeah.
Really talented young ladies in this community.
And how many conversations are you having like that with these kids? Is it all the time when you're here? Like, how often is it like that?
Once they get to know me, the thing about it here, here's the AD, I'm Mr. Robbins, but to the kids, I have them call me Randy. I want them to call me by my first name. And I do that to break down that barrier. A lot of these kids, they know I was a professional athlete. Sometimes they get nervous about that. So that's why I have the kids call me by my first name, because I'm you and you me. We're the same. So that helps break down a lot of barriers.
Yeah. Let me know if this is right. I see you more as a Casa Grande Union football player than an NFL player.
Yeah.
Is that your mindset?
Yeah. That's it.
And so, like you mentioned, you're having these conversations with these kids, and you're trying to, give them a positive reinforcement, a little bit of just encouragement, right?
Right.
If you summed it up, what is one thing that you would tell them, and what piece of advice would you give them to get to where they want to be?
Don't cheat yourself. Give it your maximum effort. You owe yourself that. You can do that. You can give yourself the maximum effort. Don't cheat yourself. Whatever, whether it's a job or whether it's a sport or whatever activity or event you go into, give it 100%. You can do that. That's all I ask for kids.
Yeah.
Because if you do it, you might be shocked what you see on the other side if you see it all the way through. And there's going to be struggles along the way, and that's the way it's supposed to be. You're going to struggle. It's not going to be easy, but that's okay, because once you get through that struggle, you're going to come out on the other side really good.
think that's the perfect way to put it there.
Yeah.
End it there. Randy, thank you so much for this conversation. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it, David.